Welcome back to Season 5 of the How to Do It video series. Now, a little earlier we taught you how to complete a compost extract, this wonderful diversity when you strip everything from the compost. And we're now going to teach you a strategy to further magnify that huge dose of biodiversity. Now, nutrition farming is what we're talking about. We talk about working with nature to improve soils, to increase productivity, to reduce farmer stress. And one of the core principles within that model is the ideas from Professor William Albrecht. He used to talk about the chemical, the physical, and the biological. Now, the chemical, of course, is not chemistry as such. We're talking minerals. We're talking about that all-important ratio, the calcium to magnesium ratio, the ratio that pushes apart and flocculates and opens the soil and allows the most important of all nutrients entry into that soil. And of course, that element, rather than a nutrient, is oxygen, the single most important thing for all carbon-based life forms. Oxygen pours in, the soil's been opened, so the chemical opens, creates the physical change, and the biology says, yes, you beauty, and fires away. Now, Albrecht could do that quite reliably by correcting that mineral-based structure 50 or 60 years ago, but in many instances now, of course, we have a scenario where the biology is simply not there to activate in the kind of levels it was 60 years back. So we need to do a bit of more work on the biological front, and that's what part of the story of the extract that we talked about. So what we're going to talk about now is water, and it's something we haven't touched upon before. And we're going to talk about the concept of dead water versus living water and what a difference it can make. What we're talking about with nutrition farming often is kind of a fusion of the best of both worlds. We're basically creating a functional hybrid. There is no rules. You just ask one question: does nature approve of this? And if it works, you do it. So just talking back to water dynamics, of course, biodynamics, it was an essential kind of concept. You took your BD preps, as they're called, and you had a machine, or you used to do it by hand, where it's called reverse stirring. So you create a vortex and then you reverse that vortex and so forth to activate the BD preps. But could that be used to amplify something other than BD preps? And the answer is most definitely yes. It most certainly can. Let's just look at the history of where some of this idea of living water came from. We had a forester / scientist in the early 1900s called Victor Schauberger, from Austria. And he was a wonderfully observant character who recognized that water never flowed in a straight line, that it meandered, that it created vortexes. The rivers always meandered, and the cooling effect of the overhanging trees had a further impact on stimulating that water. And he noted that the more movement that was present in the water, the greater the life, specifically fish and so forth in that water. And then he developed technologies and so forth relative to that concept. Now, around the same time, we had Rudolf Steiner, the founder, the rather brilliant founder of Biodynamics. And Rudolf recognized, both of them recognized, we kind of abused water as we've developed agriculture. We've forced it into stagnant ponds, and we've forced it into straight lines, which it never did naturally. And so, Steiner saw water as much more than just a solvent. He saw it as the kind of life force carrier, as did Schauberger, because the idea of a vortex is it's the path of least resistance. So it allows oxygen to move very, very efficiently into that water. And of course, there's the other concept of the energy that surrounds us all, often in quantum physics called scalar energy. And it's the reason that so much of nature has a vortex. The cow's horn, which is, of course, part of the formulation of 500 in BD, has a vortex inside it. Seashells have vortex. Pine cones have vortex. The shape, the path of least resistance allows things to move freely. In this case, oxygen, or perhaps atmospheric energy. Now, a guy called John Wilkes in the late 60s was quite a famous sculptor at the time, and he was also very much a fan of Rudolf Steiner. And he decided that rather than the quite labour-intensive at that point reverse stirring, that he would create a device, and he did it with his pottery skills, his sculpture skills, and he created these perfect geometric basins that the water flowed into, and in an attempt to try and restore that natural movement pattern to the water that had been previously pumped or pressurised or lying dormant in dead dams. And so it's it's called a lemniscate, this figure eight that's created, and it alternates. So it's just like the eddies in the river that create a vortex, and the other side creates a reverse and energizes that river water. So much different than dam water, as you probably know. So alternating clockwise, anti-clockwise, expanding and contracting rather than forcing it in that straight line. Now, as I said, the vortex is the path of least resistance. It's how blood flows. It's how sap rises in the tree or in the plant. It's how rivers meander. And so, as I said, FlowForms increase access to all-important atmospheric oxygen. And of course, dissolved oxygen is the big story for microbes to thrive. So we'll talk about minerals and microbes. Of course, the essence of of nutrition farming is this concept of minerals and microorganisms. But minerals and FlowForms, there is actually some studies on it, and it's better dispersion of colloids, of humates, of micronized minerals, for example. Wonderful to stir them through and run them through, then energize them with this concept. We see more stable multi-mineral blends. They hang together better. We see improved efficiency, often at lower rates, and we see better mineral delivery, and all of these things have been researched. You can further boost things, of course, by adding some nutrition in there, something like our microamino drive, for example, this wonderfully tiny amino acid, and understanding that amino acids are the basis of everything. Every process in the plant, including photosynthesis, is driven by amino acids, and this new concept, this microamino drive, or MAD, is about these ridiculously tiny amino acids that give a response that I've not really seen in any other product that we've developed. It's really quite remarkable. It's one of my favourites. So the mineral story is great. You can get more in, you can get better response at lower rates, and you get better delivery with the oxygenation and the movement of the minerals and the activation of the minerals in this situation. But really, it's microbes that thrive, and that's what we're doing here. We've added some of our product called Brix Fix, which is kelp and fulvic acid and tricontinol. We've also added the wonderful microamino drive into the vermicast that we just made, and we're just going to run this now, and we'll show you how it's done through a FlowForm, and then we'll pump it out, and we'll either fertigate or foliar spray that on an area that's struggling a little bit because we've just come out of a very, very dry period, and we just had so grateful for 50 mils of rain just 2 days ago. So microbes, huge story, because it gently increases that all-important dissolved oxygen. You've got oxygen pouring in with this flowing vortex. Faster colonization of the microbes once they've been treated. More consistent field response. The microbes, of course, arrive alive, intact, and energized. They're ready for work. They're not stressed. They're not stunned. So we're not replacing good nutrition or good biology. This FlowForm is a really, really powerful amplifier. When water moves as nature intended, minerals and microbes shine, and greater resilience is the outcome. So we'll demonstrate now, and you can see how it works. We're standing here amidst the sweet sound of flowing water, and of course it's not water, it's our compost extract with the nutrients added. And basically, I'll just give you some background on this device so that if you want to explore it, it comes from a company called FlowForms Living Waters. You can Google that and you'll see all of their information on their website. I'm impressed with it. We're impressed with it on the farm, and of course, Adrian, my farm manager, had much more to do with it than I have since we started utilising it. and he's noticed one particular benefit relative. We were really stressed here. You've got no idea. We just couldn't get enough water. We've been dry for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we've got fruit on the trees and battling. And Adrian, I'll just ask your opinion of what you've noted with the use of the FlowForm.
Well, the big notice, we noticed that last week the leaves have turned yellow.
Yeah.
And that's right. And the stone fruit trees were all going brown.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the whole orchard, you wouldn't believe that it was in that shape last week.
Yeah, I can't believe it come back even.
It's come back. It's it's green. You wouldn't think we're in that situation.
Yeah. So, and that's the resilience. That's the resilience that we're talking about with that comeback. You also have noted we run this thing for an hour before we apply either foliar or fertigate. And Adrian's also made a note that it's quite different. He's asked us to smell the solution now and then smell it in 60 minutes' time. What have you noted?
The smell changes. It comes a lot sweeter. I don't know. It's completely different from what it is now.
Yeah, that's the change that's happening with the oxygen and the biology brewing. So
it's definitely doing something.
Will you imagine this vermicast, this extract that we've just made? I mean, there's this huge diversity of organisms. We just put some food with them. So now they have an hour of this perfect dissolved oxygen delivery via the vortexes, and they're going to be active and running and rearing to go. And we've got our most stressed paddock that Adrian's going to put this on a couple of hectares. We're going to put the entire batch on as soon as this process is finished. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.